Cześć czołem, w dzisiejszym odcinku podcastu specjalnego goszczę dyrektora NBA Replay Center Jasona Phillipsa. Razem z Panem Phillipsem rozmawiam o początkach jego kariery sędziowskiej, pracy w centrum powtórek i o tym, jak to jest być sędzią NBA po godzinach pracy. Zapraszam. First of all, I'm asking about it every person which is in my podcast. I'm very happy that you are in my podcast, Mr. Phillips. What's your basketball roots? How the basketball thing started?
Sure, Mike. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. I appreciate the invitation. I started playing basketball while in high school, junior high. And then once I graduated high school, immediately began to referee once I was a freshman in college, and progressed fairly quickly through the high school ranks, and had a mentor of mine who got me started in high school refereeing, who encouraged me to continue to work at it and continue to get better. And so I started going to some camps that were run by NBA referees. I fell in love with the NBA game of basketball, and so got seen at a camp by a gentleman who was the director of officials of the NBA at that time. His name was Daryl Garretson, who's now in the Basketball Hall of Fame for his accomplishments with basketball and officiating. And he saw me, brought me into the minor leagues of the NBA, which at that time was the Continental Basketball Association. I worked in the CBA for 6 years, and I also did 3 years in the WNBA, which was wonderful training for me also, and then got hired full-time into the NBA in 2000 and refereed on the court from 2000 until 2019, at which time, after Game 5 of the 2019 finals, I retired and came off the court, and now am the vice president of replay operations, and I oversee the day-to-day operations of the replay center in Secaucus, New Jersey.
But why being ref? It was like to control the game or to be somebody on the court that is really important. Of course, you've got stars, but on the end of the day, refs are the most important persons on the court.
You know, that's a great question, Mike. So I got started in refereeing, again, at the urging of a mentor, which he originally just said, hey, you know, you were a good player, a smart player. Obviously, I was not playing basketball in college at that time. And so he just encouraged me if I wanted to stay around the game, which I love the game of basketball. And so I saw it as an opportunity to stay involved with the game, stay in shape, and to earn a little bit of extra money while I was going to college. And that was my initial draw to refereeing basketball. But then as I progressed, even when I first got into refereeing, I didn't realize that you could make a career of it. And so as I stated previously, a few years into my high school career, the same mentor encouraged me to start training to try to take it to the next level. And I was very fortunate to be in the right place at the right time and have some very good teachers coming up before I ever even got into the program. But I was encouraged by a gentleman back at home just to stay involved with the game. And then I just fell in love with officiating. And it's funny, you brought up, because did you want to be somebody in the game or did you want to have the control? And I never looked at it that way. I always looked at it as it was a game that I thoroughly and deeply loved, and to continue to be a part of it in any way was just a blessing to me. And so when this opportunity arose, it was the first opportunity that I had. I never looked at going into coaching or anything like that. This was just the first opportunity I had. I took it and immediately fell in love again with the officiating part of the game and the camaraderie that goes along with knowing other officials also.
But you were active ref from mid-90s to the, let's say, end of the 20s. And you probably saw everything. How hard for even very experienced referee is to being a good referee? Because I hope we are going to talk about how to be a referee for such a long time. But from your perspective, a lot of basketball rules changed. Can you tell what was the hardest for you to work with?
Sure. To take your question kind of in pieces, it's funny, when I first became an NBA referee, I used to joke with some of the more senior referees about how can you have trouble remembering this rule, or how can you have trouble remembering that rule? As I progressed in my career, I found out why, because, just over my time, my 19 years, almost 20 years in the NBA, we had a few rules that changed multiple times. Such as the clear path rule, such as adding the restricted area on the block charge plays, things like that. So although we are all very good at knowing the rules, because that is part of our job, obviously, is to know the rules forward and backwards and inside and out, it can get confusing at times when you have a rule change multiple times. And so that just means we have to constantly stay in our rule book and study the rules from year to year. And as rules get updated, make sure we stay on top of that. The second part of your question as to what was the most difficult play to call, block charge was always difficult because it was always a fast moving play. But one of the most difficult plays that I see in our game is out of bounds. All of the players in the NBA and at any professional level are so quick with their hands, right, Mike, as you know, and just so athletic that there are times when it is very difficult to tell who last touched the ball and things like that. So those two, the block charge play and the out of bounds play, have by far been the most difficult for me.
Can you see the difference from physical side and technical side, maybe from 90s? Because everybody is talking about comparing LeBron James, for example, with Michael Jordan, handshake rule, kill that guy. He can't play in that era. He can play in that era.
Sure. So obviously the game evolves over time, and with that, the rules evolve, and with that, players evolve, right? And so the game is ever changing. And that's one of the things that I love about our game, is that it is very organic. And again, you touched on something that is very fitting, which is the game is difficult to officiate because of the athletes that play in the NBA and at other professional levels are so good at what they do. And they are so strong and so quick that it makes it difficult. But if you want to talk about changes over the years, I think back in the 90s, you saw a game that was really played from the inside out, right? So most of the offenses ran through a post player, whether it was a Patrick Ewing, a David Robinson, things like Hakeem Olajuwon, players like that. Now, I think you see it's more of an outside in game. And the amazing thing to me, Mike, now is that you have players that still look like Hakeem Olajuwon, that look like Patrick Ewing, maybe not quite as large as Shaquille O'Neal, but we have very large players that are now playing on the perimeter when you would only used to see them at the post. And I think that's one of the things that I truly love about our game, is that we are showcasing, in my opinion, the all-around athleticism of the players in the NBA. And that's one of the things that I think makes it so enjoyable. And I think you saw the beginning of that start with the Dirk Nowitzkis of the world coming over and being a 7-footer that can play on the perimeter and have a jump shot and things like that. So I just think the game's at a really good place now, but it obviously has evolved, and the physicality officiating that part of it has always been, difficult. Is Shaquille O'Neal making a move that's illegal at the post, or is it just that the defender weighs 75 pounds less than he does, right? And so that was always a difficult thing. And now, especially, I'll take it to the perimeter. The moves that our players work on the perimeter are very difficult to discern at times. But with that, an NBA referee watches so much videotape and is constantly breaking down tape to get better at their profession. And it's a constant game of catch up a little bit, in the fact that the player knows what they're going to do, right? But the first time the referee sees a move, it may kind of catch them off guard, but then they're immediately on that, watching that play on tape and trying to figure out how to better officiate certain plays. But again, I think you've seen the game change. The easiest way to put it is from an inside-out game to an outside-in game now.
But what about the, let's say, ref recruitment? There was any changes from 90s to this day? I'm not saying about replay center, we are going to tell about it, but about recruitment of the referees, because last few seasons NBA putting, I'm not saying pressure, but a lot of light for the new refs. What can you tell about recruitment?
And that's a very good question also. So as I stated, from when I came into the training program back in the early 90s, there really wasn't any type of scouting necessarily, except for Daryl Garrettson and a gentleman that worked for him by the name of Aaron Wade. Those two gentlemen got out and saw a lot of games, and if they felt that you had potential to be an NBA referee, then they would bring you into the training program. Now we have a whole scouting department that works for the NBA, and now referees that are interested in a career in either the NBA, the WNBA, or the G League can actually go onto the NBA's website and fill out a resume and get into the NBA's system. And then we will have a member of our scouting department contact them and observe them either live, which the pandemic has put a little bit of a halt on the travel and everything, but there is always videotape available, and so they watch a lot of games via videotape also. But that all starts with now the senior vice president of referee operations, who is Monty McCutcheon, and then all of his team, which is Mike Callahan, who oversees the G League. It is Sue Blau that oversees the WNBA. And then, of course, as I mentioned before, the entire scouting department. So if a referee goes online and puts in their resume and gets a file started with them, then the scouting department will see them, as I said, either via video, or we'll get out and see them live, and they will identify prospective referees across the country. And then the NBA now has what they call Grassroots Camp, which is normally a referee that is just being identified as possibly being in the program, and they will come and watch them actually referee games at a central location there, and you will have a number of scouts and a number of people from the referee operations department there. Then if they do well there, they will continue to be monitored, and then I believe the next step is an elite camp. And again, if you continue to progress, then eventually you would get the opportunity to referee at the Las Vegas Summer League, which is, obviously put on by the NBA and has NBA players playing at that level. And obviously, if you are successful at those levels, then an opportunity to referee either in the G League, in the WNBA, and possibly the NBA.
One season of rookie ref. He needs to be assessed somehow.
Sure.
If he's doing mistakes, how he's connecting with the players. There is a guarantee that after one good year you stay for longer as NBA ref, or it's like you must wait for your chance because a lot of older refs, more experienced, are working right now.
No, Mike, that's a great question. So once a referee is hired into the NBA, they're evaluated numerous times throughout the year. In fact, again, Monty McCutcheon has a staff of, I believe, 4 or 5 team members that he has that go out on a regular basis and are nightly watching games either via videotape or in arena, live. And so they are constantly working with all levels of referees, not just the new referees, but there is an emphasis put on the newer referees to help them be successful at the NBA level, as with any level, because the goal is to provide leadership and knowledge and to help all referees get better, whether it's at the G League level, whether it's at the WNBA level, or whether it's at the NBA level, because that is one of the things that Monty has stressed as being the leader of the referee operations department, is he wants consistent messaging, consistent education, and consistent officiating across all 3 of the leagues, the NBA, the WNBA, and the G League. And so therefore, those team members that he has working alongside him, their goal is on a nightly basis to carry out that message and to work with all referees. But as you so aptly pointed out, the younger referees are still learning, right? As you well know, as younger players come into a league, have a lot to learn when they get there and a lot to survive. And as you pointed out too, it's a very stressful position in that there is no guarantee that you stay once you get hired, right? And the same thing with the G League. Once you reach that level, or the WNBA, you must continue to get better at your craft, because there are others who will be getting better. And if you don't continue an upward movement, then you may not be asked to return the following year, because there are no guaranteed contracts for referees.
Yeah, and I think it's harder than you are being a pro athlete, because you can be better and better and better every day. At the end of the day, you can't be better than other referees because you are working under the rules. So I think it's probably more competitive than a pro athlete's world.
Well, there's obviously a whole lot less spots available. Correct. I mean, there's only, I believe this year, there are 75 referees on the NBA staff, as opposed to, I think there's 450 NBA players, I think, something like that. So, it's all relative, but yeah, referees have to constantly work at their craft.
Okay, let's open NBA Replay Center questions bag. What is the bigger challenge for you, being a head of Replay Center, principal of everybody, or being referee in NBA finals under the pressure? What is the hardest?
Mike, it's funny that you asked that question, because in being a referee, right, my mindset going into a game was always the game came first, then my partners came second, and then I came last, right? And what I mean by that was we had our first and foremost goal was to take care of the game, right? And to make sure it was adjudicated properly. And then my second goal was to make sure that the other two members of the crew on that given night looked as good as they possibly could, that I helped them be as good as they could possibly be. And then lastly was for me to fit in wherever I could help the crew be better. But I always wanted my teammates to shine above me, because my mindset was always, if the crew was successful, then by default I individually would be successful. And so with that being said, each and every night we were trying to do the best that we could for the 48 minutes that we were refereeing that game, and hopefully leave that game in a way that could be better for the next crew also, that they didn't have to come in and take care of mistakes that we had made, to give explanations to the coaches and things like that, but to leave that game just as good as we possibly could. Now, in the replay center, as you and I were speaking a little bit offline earlier, kind of like a coach, I feel like a parent now, right? So now I'm watching every game every night, right? So now I have the stress of however many games are going on that night. I am pulling for all of the referees to be successful in every one of those games, which, even though I was pulling for them previously as a fellow referee, now I'm sitting there watching it, and in close games and very competitive games and difficult games to referee, I'm chewing on my fingernails, just hoping that the referees do a great job in that game, because I'm pulling for them and wanting them to be successful. And so it's, as you said a little bit earlier, it's like being a parent and wanting your children to be successful. So the stress, I think, now is a little bit more in the fact that I could handle making my own mistakes, right, in a game, whether that's a finals game or any other game. But now I feel when I see a fellow official make a mistake, or it's a difficult game, and I'm not there to assist or maybe help them, it's a little difficult just looking on and not being able to maybe fill in the gap and help make the situation go a little bit more smoothly. So I think now it's a little bit more stressful in the replay center.
And you are the end of the system when you are telling that I saw this ball out of the bounds. It must be out of the bounds. There is no margin of the mistake.
No, that is for sure too, Mike. I mean, in the game as a referee, obviously sometimes you get blocked out by another player, or you don't see a second player's hand reach in and tap the ball away, right? Or maybe you don't see the hit on the arm or something like that. That would be a foul. When we're reviewing things on a 65-inch high definition television in super slow motion, you're absolutely right. There's no excuse to miss anything at that point.
What is the real purpose of NBA Replay Center? Because, challenges, new rules that referees can talk each other in Secaucus and on the court, let's say in Chicago. Because sometimes I think that it's more for the fans to cut the discussion that something goes this way or that way. But there is more fans purpose, or maybe more education of the teams, controlling the teams.
No, that's a great aspect, Mike, and that's a very interesting perspective on it. The Replay Center was designed and is there today as an additional tool for referees, right? One of the things that I think it's probably hard for fans to understand is that perfection is elusive, right? You're never going to be perfect at officiating. There's always going to be missed calls along the way, just because there are human beings involved, and human beings are imperfect. But NBA referees on a nightly basis, due to their training, due to their studies, due to their love of the game and love for the job, are excellent on every given night. And one of the things that I was going to say that I don't think people understand is when a play is missed by referees, and it's obviously highlighted because it's at the end of a game, and so there's a lot of attention brought to it. Nobody is more displeased with that than the referee themselves. And I don't think a lot of people know that, but it's because the referees take pride in their job, and they would love to be perfect. I would have loved to have been perfect when I was on the court. But like I said, perfection is elusive, and you will never catch it. And there's always some place that you could have been better, but we can always be excellent. And so I think that's where the Replay Center was initially created, and even now continues just to be another arrow in the quiver, I say, of referees, or another tool in their toolbox that can be used to help maintain or even take one more step closer to that excellence on a nightly basis, because we have a limited amount of things that we can review, right? And so, as I spoke of earlier, out of bounds is one of the most difficult things to see. And so one of the things that we can review in the Replay Center are out of bounds, right? In the last 2 minutes of the game. And of course, we now have the coach's challenge. If the coach thinks that a play is missed, then they can challenge the play, whether it's an out of bounds, whether it's a goaltending, or whether it was a foul called on their team. And, there are times when referees miss plays. There are times when players miss shots, right? So it's the same sort of thing. I haven't seen too many players in my career of refereeing that have ever gone 100% from the field. There are a few, don't get me wrong, but there's also a difference between going 100% from the field and also playing a perfect game. So as you well know, so I look at the Replay Center as just being an additional tool for the referees.
The Replay Center is like a finished project, or there are any room left for development, making maybe referees unneeded on the games and leaving all Replay Center only?
Yeah, again, a very good question. I think I don't think we'll ever replace human referees on the court, as long as the game is also played by humans. I just think that's a dynamic that is part of the game. But that's just my opinion. Because with that being said, technology is ever evolving, right? I mean, we're meeting now on a Zoom call, right? And having this podcast. How many years ago would we not have been able to do this? We would have had to call each other on the phone and that sort of thing. So technology is ever evolving, and the NBA, being a progressive league such as they are always looking for ways to improve the game, number one. And if that calls for improved technology to help assist referees or help to assist the Replay Center, that's always part of the conversation. And from year to year, that's why rules get changed. And I think you will see, as technology continues to progress, you will see things change in the Replay Center and to officiating. And of course, to our commissioner's credit, Adam Silver is always looking for new and innovative ways to help better the game, not just to change the game, but to make the game better. And in fact, we challenge our entire company across the world, and individual departments within the company to come up with innovative ideas for the game. And Adam welcomes those and listens to those and implements those if it is decided, not solely from him, but we have committees that are put together, such as the competition committee and things like that constantly monitors rules and innovation, and ways to better the game. And so I think you will continue to see our game and the replay center evolve over years to come, Mike.
After the job, you are a normal person. You must make your groceries and so on. Did you have any situation like after the game, some fan comes to you and you made a bet call for my team, blah, 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 or nothing happens like that?
There are some hardcore fans that recognize you, whether you're, walking through an airport or something like that. But I'll give you a little funny story. I actually worked a playoff game one night. I won't say where it was, but worked a playoff game, and there was two gentlemen, and they were sitting probably, I don't know, 2 or 3 rows off of the court, right? And the entire night, for whatever reason, either they thought I specifically was having a bad night or whatever, but they were on me, Mike, all night long. and it didn't appear that they were yelling at my partners, but maybe that was me just being a little sensitive. But they were clearly yelling at me, at least, all night long. And so finally I worked the game and I'm all done. And so the crew and I, we go into the locker room, we shower afterwards. And as you may or may not know, when we come to the game and then back to the hotel after the game, we wear a suit, right? So I have on a coat and a tie. And now I step in to the elevator in the hotel, and guess who also is in the elevator, Mike? The 2 guys that were wearing me out all night long were in the elevator, and they've got their T-shirt from the game, and their cup and everything. And so I'm standing there with my suitcase that's got my uniform in it and everything, but I've got on a suit, and I just say to the gentleman, "Oh, hey, did you guys went to the game tonight?" "Oh, yeah, we went to the game, had a great time." I said, "Really?" I said, your team went? "Oh, no, we didn't win tonight." "Well, how was the refereeing?" "Oh, they were awful. They were the worst referees we've ever had." And I said, "Okay." I said, "Well, if you were to get a chance to say something to one of them, what would you say to one of them?" "Oh, don't quit your day jobs. You're awful. You need to go back." "Okay, well, I just asking, just wondering what your opinion was." And they had no idea that I was the guy that they were yelling at all night long now. And so that, to me, Mike, really just drove home the point that it wasn't me personally. They didn't know Jason Phillips. They were yelling at the uniform and they were yelling for their home team, right? They were trying to be advocates, we'll say, for their home team. But it was a fun little moment in the elevator. I never let them know that I was one of the referees, and I never let on that they were kind of also getting under my skin. But it was an enjoyable little moment. But yes, there are times when fans do recognize you outside, and that's both good and bad. Sometimes it's nice to be recognized at times, but then also it's nice to be anonymous at times also, and just be a normal member of society, I guess.
But it's very problematic because you can't be an ordinary fan. It's against the rules of being ref, and you probably can't even connect some way with players. Anonymous by 2. You must be anonymous.
No, of course it is. And even, as a kid growing up, as most kids are, you are fans of your local teams and things like that. But it's an interesting dynamic in that once you become a referee, you no longer have those ties anymore. And I think it's because, you see the game from a different perspective once you are a referee. And everyone in the game has a horse in the race, so to speak, right? Mm-hmm. So you as a coach, you want to win the game and you want to do whatever you can to win the game. That is the same thing with players. Also, to the extent that you play within the rules, you want to do whatever you can to win the game. And so the referee is there to make sure that the game is adjudicated properly and that there is a level playing field for all athletes to showcase their athleticism. And on that given night, hopefully that the team that plays the best wins the game, as it should be. And so I just, as you become more and more involved in officiating, there becomes this this distance, I guess, between the teams that you loved as a kid and stuff. And obviously by the time, I reached the level of officiating, the guys that I grew up watching were no longer playing anyway. Right. And so there's a difference with that also, but just being a professional at your job, there are still professional relationships that you have with players, coaches that you see along the way during travels or at charitable events and things like that. But at the end of the day, you have a job to do, and that comes first. And that job is to adjudicate the game properly. And so that, as I mentioned earlier, the game comes first above anything else. And so I just think referees take on a different mindset as they progress in their careers of officiating, and they don't have a favorite team anymore. There are still favorites in other sports, but when it comes to basketball, if you're a basketball official, you don't have a favorite team in basketball anymore. Your favorite team are the referees. You're always cheering for the guys in gray now instead of the teams in the dark or the light jerseys. So,
yeah, and probably is the hardest part of this job, because sometimes you remember after what you were being a kid, cheering that team, and you must forget about it no matter what, because you are in the job. So I think it's the hardest point of it.
For sure, it is difficult at times, but as I said, being a professional at that, you're very good at setting aside your previous feelings as a child and stuff to do your job.
Okay, Mr. Phillips, thank you for your time. I know it's rude, but I wish you an easy season without any turmoils.
Thank you so much for that, Mike, and thank you again for having me. Hopefully would love to do it again sometime.